Good morning everyone! Welcome back to the Off-Grid Garage. In not so sunny, it is actually sunny. Yeah, it is sunny hot Australia. In today's video, welcome back to the battery shelf. In today's video we wanna see the weather. Okay, hang on. There you go. A little bit of a mix of clouds and sun. Nice 23 degrees, perfect. So my friends, in today's video we want to work on the battery shelf and start upgrading it. Yeah, this will be the first stage of upgrades which is coming to the battery shelf. We will of course keep the original build and design idea, but in this first stage I want to upgrade the BMS in all three shelves. Yeah, as you can see, this is still the old Overkill Solar 100 amp BMS here. So yeah, this BMS has worked very well, no problems, no issues at all. Unfortunately, Overkill doesn't build these BMS anymore. I mean, it is a JBD BMS after all, but Overkill used to pimp them a little bit, yeah, upgrade them, turbocharge them, so to speak, and you got a lifetime warranty on these BMS. Whatever that means. Because if it doesn't work anymore, lifetime is over and so is the warranty. So, I'm not sure. Anyway, they're building now this other Overkill BMS, which is... So, first of all, we want to disconnect this battery here, completely isolated, of course. So, next step will be to disconnect all the balance cables or turn off the BMS, first of all. Before we do that, though, I want to log into the BMS and have a look if we can see the cycle count for this battery for the last 4 or 5 years or so. So, the Overkill Solar app should find it, right? Overkill BMS, there it is. And here it is. Here we can see we've got 5 millivolt deviation across all these batteries here. That is beautiful. 15% state of charge, it tells us. Now, okay, that's a bit off. That's probably more like 35-40% we have. Charging over current times 13. Charging over temp times 5. Single cell over voltage times 2 and single cell under voltage times 10. That is the event count since manufacturing date 21. So this is 5 years old. Maybe I got it in 22, so it's 4 years in this battery shelf now. Okay, and up here we can see we've got battery cycles, 494 cycles. This BMS has never reset. It is in here since the beginning of the battery shelf. Alright, let me give you a quick recap here if you haven't seen the older videos of the battery shelf here. This Overkill BMS used to be in the bottom shelf, and here in the top was a Heltec, exactly, the Heltec, the long Heltec BMS with a passive balancer. Had some software issues, they never could fix it, they never could pinpoint it, but the BMS was overall not that great. So I replaced it eventually with another JK BMS and put the Overkill BMS here at the top. Yeah, this is a 304 ampere hour battery from EVE, and so far this BMS has worked a treat. No issues at all. So this was actually installed since the beginning, since the first turn on of the battery shelf, and it has measured close to 500 cycles for these batteries here. Considering these are rated with 6,000 cycles, and we have now done 500 cycles. So this battery would last 48 years in terms of cycles if I use it the same way as the last 4 years. And we all know it is not about the cycles, it is about the calendar aging, yeah? The battery is still aging even I'm not using it that much. And I've put in 4 years only 500 cycles on these batteries. But obviously the calendar aging clock is ticking inside these batteries here and prematurely aging these batteries. And this is what finally will kill them. It is not the cycles. Because as you can see, this battery would last almost 50 years now. Crazy. Alright, anyway, 500 cycles we have on the clock here. Let's turn it off. That was the very last time for the Overkill Solar BMS. Goodbye and thank you very, very much. Alright, first thing we want to do, turn it off and take off the balance cables starting from B16, B0, so starting from the higher ones to the lower ones. Doesn't make a huge difference anyway. Alright, next step. No, that's the wrong one. So now we are isolating the battery negative, taking off the main negative of the BMS, disconnecting it from the battery. There we go. And the same here on the other side. I'm really glad we installed these terminals, these double pole terminals here. So one is connected to the battery negative, and over here one is connected directly to the circuit breaker, and the other pole is connected to the BMS. So we can quickly take it off and switch out the BMS without touching the battery itself or the circuit breaker. Very, very easy to do. Oh shit. Oh shit, I dropped the nut. And I think it went all the way down. Okay, and now we should be able to almost Velcro. Alright, let's take out the temperature sensors, and here is the BMS. There it is. And now it is basically a matter of pushing down these buttons here. Oh no, hang on, this side. And taking out all the balance cables. Oh, I just realized they also have ferrules on them. I'm also glad we installed these terminals here, so I don't need to touch the battery at all. Yeah, and this is basically taking out the BMS, putting a new one in, and we are up and running within 10 minutes again. And I think I've hinted this in one of the last videos already. I will replace this Overkill BMS with a JK inverter BMS. This is the 300 amp version. I haven't got a smaller one, otherwise I would have put in a 100 amp version. This is the only one I have at the moment, the spare one, and flashed with version 19.31b. Yeah, the B version is for, so we can parallel this one with up to 31 other JK inverter BMSs, or B series BMS, of course. So this is what we are going to install, and it should nicely fit inside here. I thought about installing some standoff, so it's a bit away from the bottom here. Considering this is a 300 amp BMS and we are pushing maximum of 80 amps. Nah, not with all these batteries in parallel here. We are pushing probably 20 amps through it. There will be no heat dissipation necessary for this BMS, so it can sit here directly on the metal. Of course, we build the battery shelf with isolated floor, so all these cells here, they are not sitting on aluminium sheet. They are sitting on a nice piece of acrylic plastic. Yeah, and why are we going with the JK inverter BMS? Well, what is the alternative to the JK inverter BMS? Yeah, I could use the Pace BMS or the new Global Power BMS, but I think both are not really there yet. They are not really competitors to the JK inverter BMS. This has a ton of features, gets regularly firmware updates, it has superior functions, it works with Home Assistant, and we can parallel up to 32 of these BMSs now in parallel directly. It works a treat with my existing Victron system in terms of communication. So I don't really see the point of using any other BMS than the JK inverter BMS. I'm not doing any advertising here or something. This is my personal opinion. There's nothing else on the market with these features, this design, this functionality than the JK inverter BMS, in my own opinion. If you would have used a different BMS here, leave your comments down below and tell me exactly why your BMS you have chosen is better than the JK inverter BMS. But for now we are going with this BMS here, and as you have seen, it takes only a few seconds to take out the BMS and swap it with another one. So once the version 22 is coming out, or 21, whatever it's called, I may upgrade this one here to the newer version then, because this will also be the master BMS of all the other BMSs. Yeah, this is the closest to the Raspberry Pi running the Venus OS up here, and I've got the network cable, the communication cable already there, so this will all plug in nicely there. Alright, so decision is now this way around or the other way around. Yeah, bump it everywhere, nice. In this case the terminals would be closer to the actual terminals we have to connect everything, but it would be swapped. Yeah, we've got the breaker connection or the load connection on this side and the battery connection on this side, and we would cross the cables here, which is not a bad thing, but this is my OCD, we cannot do that at all. This is definitely not going to happen. So the only correct installation orientation is like this. Yeah, we've got the balance cables up here, they need to connect to there. We will have them curled up over there somewhere, but now we can connect this terminal from the battery negative all the way to the battery negative of the BMS, and this one here goes in the loop back to this terminal if I can find the nut again. It's just an M8 nut, it doesn't really matter, but I think it went all the way down and is now sitting here down in this bottom. We will find it in 20 years again, so don't worry about it. And to connect this BMS, I have actually found these beautiful, nice cables here from one of the many do-it-yourself boxes I have here. Maybe we have upgraded the cables in this box and these are the leftovers now. I can't really tell where they were coming from, but this is a 6-gauge wire, double 6-gauge wire, has one M8 ring lug on one side and 2 smaller ones on the other side, so perfect for what we are using it here. And I've got 2 of them, and this is all very nice and super flexible silicon cable here, perfect for what we are using it. And now you would say, well, we've got a 300 amp BMS and you're using only a 6-gauge, double 6-gauge wire here. This is far too small. We've got a 35mm cable here, but you need to consider we've got a 100 amp circuit breaker in here, yeah, the no arc, and this one, you probably can see this one is dialed down to 80 amps only, yeah? So this will trip at 80 amps after a while at least. And in another stage I want to also put a fuse in here, yeah? One of these class T fuses with at least 50 or 100 kiloamps of breaking capacity. Because the internal resistance of these batteries here is so low, you should always use a fuse as well. Even this breaker has 25 kiloamp of breaking capacity. It may not be sufficient to actually disconnect this battery safely here. So I'm upgrading all these batteries here with fuses with at least 50, 75 or even 100 kiloamps of breaking capacity. And I probably choose a 200 amp fuse here, or maybe 150 amps, I'm not sure yet, because this would be a pure short current protection, yeah? Everything else the circuit breaker is responsible for, but in a direct short, I want to have a fuse in here which is able to disconnect the circuit safely. And I want to mount this as close as possible to the battery positive. And because we've got an 80 amp circuit breaker here, I can use double 6-gauge wire easily for this BMS. And I think these ones are just long enough. I can move this a little bit forward. And this one will go in a loop and then come back to the BMS terminal. So that should work a treat. We've got the 3 terminals here for the BMS connection. What I'm going to do is I will manufacture a short bus bar across these 3 terminals. Even I'm pretty sure we can use only one of these terminals to run the whole current through. It is a bit nicer to have a small bus bar across these terminals, and then we can connect the cables to it safely. So I'm just having a look in my box full of bus bars and big connection cables, and I found these super old bus bars here which were coming with the cells. Yeah, you may remember these ones if you are old enough. They have these long holes on each side, probably 2 millimeters thick, tinned copper. If I cut off these long holes on both sides and drill 3 holes in it, they would cover these 3 terminals on each side perfectly. I just need to find another one for this side. Yeah, I found plenty of them in this bag here. So we've got a second one and many, many more. Yeah, and later on they even came with a bit of heat shrink in between, but still very unflexible bus bars. We don't use them anymore these days. So I experimented a bit with the cables, and I think this is the sweet spot. If we turn the ring lugs of the cables to the outside of the BMS and then have the cables running like this in a loop, and going back to the terminal here, and these cables are a bit separated, but that's just a different length on this side, and the cables on this side running around this corner nicely to the terminal of the battery negative. So cool. Alright, and now we want to connect these balance cables to our terminal block, and I'm really considering of shortening them because they are 1 meter long, and I really don't need this distance. It is just from here to there. This is already getting messy here. I don't like it. Let's see if we can push them to this side. Yeah, if we can keep them down here, some like this. A little bit of Velcro. I think I can organize them, and I'm probably happy with that if they stay like this. But these long spaghettis, geez. Alright, and from here we do a bit of looping. Like this, maybe 2 loops. Like this, and it is relatively clean. All right, I think this will work. Okay, I think I'm pretty happy with the result of the balance cables here. They're going in a loop and then connect nicely to the terminals here for the balance cables. I've sorted out the temperature sensors as well because they are now long enough so I can place them actually at strategic points here inside the battery in between the cells. While the ones from the Overkill BMS were very short, so they didn't even reach the battery. But now we can certainly do that and get accurate measurement of the battery. So I've now managed to install these temperature sensors as well. And thankfully we used Velcro here over the whole battery, so I could include the temperature sensors into this sausage of cables running across the batteries. And because I've left this gap here, I could really poke these sensors in between 2 batteries. So I'm measuring now in between the cells. Pretty good. Alright, so this is all done. Balance cables, negative goes to here. Looking good. So next and almost final step would be to connect the communication board to the BMS. I have found this little box online and 3D printed it. Where's the lid? Here. Now let me show you. So this is the box I found online. It comes with a lid, and this one sits in the box like this. And then this one fits perfectly on top of it. So someone has done a really good job with that. Almost, because it is too tight around the RJ45 ports. It is just too tight. I think I got it now. Alright, so that's how it looks like. It has all the writing on it as well, and a little gap here for the cables to come in. Unfortunately, the cutout is on the wrong side, it's on the top, yeah? I would need it over here, down here somewhere. So I probably have to cut into the plastic here a bit and make a new cutout. And I was thinking about where to put this box here. First thought was to put it somewhere out here, so I can easily access it if I need to patch the cables and everything. But then I thought, well, once they are installed, I will never touch them again usually, you know? But I didn't like the idea to have them somewhere out here and obstruct the access to the breaker. And here at the back, it just looks messy with all the cables hanging out and going from one box to another. So that's why I decided to mount this box somewhere here in the back. Yeah, inside the battery compartment, we just drill 2 holes and tap an M4 in here in this aluminium sheet. And then this box will sit over there, and all the cables will be internally inside the battery shelf. Obviously, these cables are too short to reach this box. So I have ordered a longer ribbon cable and also extension cables for these ones. So once they arrive, we can just extend these cables for the communication and everything will be good. So that's somewhere over here then. For now, we will just connect them and leave the box sitting at the back of the BMS. And also the power button, yeah, the power button. Oh, the positive cable. Shit, I would have forgotten that. So yeah, the power button. I thought about this as well. So ideally, well, no, as an option, I could drill a 40mm hole here on the outside and just have the power button outside of the battery box, yeah? I didn't do this for any of the other BMSs. Yeah, the power button sits there on top of the balance cables. This one doesn't even have a power button. And from the JBD BMS, from the Overkill BMS before, the power button was inside the BMS. And I never, in this 5 years now, I never had to turn off the BMS. The BMS is running 24/7 for the last 5 years. And probably this is exactly the same what I'm going to do here as well. I'll just connect this cable to the BMS, curl it up and leave it sitting inside the box, because if I need to do any work here, I need to turn off the BMS, I need to take off the front panel anyway. And then I've got access to the power button. So again, no hole needs to be drilled in the battery shelf. And then I remembered our awesome work light we had installed here, these LED strips inside the battery shelf. Look at this, beautiful. And I didn't have the light on here because I didn't have any USB ports free on the Raspberry Pi. So the LED strip was just disconnected. But now I've connected the little power bank I've built a while back and supply power, and it gives us a perfect work light to organize these cables. There you go, modification done. So I'm probably aiming for the same height as the battery cells, just from a design and optical perspective, getting it straight. Mark here, mark there. So I'm using some brass threaded inserts. And you just use a soldering iron and push them into the studs. So I've got a nice mounting point this way. I should have connected the cable first. Damn it. But now it's very easy to take off again. I personally think this case is a bit large. And I would have designed it a lot smaller. It also doesn't quite fit around these RJ45 ports here. You have to push really hard to... here you go. And we have to open it up again to mount the longer cables then. These are tiny M2 screws. Alright, that's it. Very short cables. Oh wow. And as always guys, you'll find the links to all my tools, all the materials I've used, including my favorite ratchet crimpers and also the favorite Miss Piggy heat gun. All the links are down in the video description. But look at this mess, just from replacing a BMS. Jeez. Okay, so this is just a temporary setup, of course, because the cables are far too short now. It is now sitting directly on the terminals of the BMS. That is not great. I can't even look at this. Alright, I've got the power button connected, but I haven't turned it on yet. I've unplugged all the balance cables again. We have to connect the main positive anyway. And I want to check the consistency here of the balance cables anyway, the voltage consistency, that everything is in the right order before we turn it on. Negative is here, 3.2, 6.5, 9, 13, 42, 45, 49, 52. Yeah, I think that's it. So I'm just in the process of making my own positive power cable for the JK inverter BMS. And we should have an M3 ring lock on each of the sides. Yeah, one connects to the BMS itself. No, this is a version 14. This doesn't have the terminal. And the other side connects directly to the battery positive without any fuse in between. So I was really thinking of putting a fuse in between, because this is unfused battery positive to the BMS. I know they are having a bit of a spike when you turn them on for the very first time. There's an inrush current into the BMS. I really would like to put a fuse in between, and if it is only a 20 amp fuse or something, you know, it's a bit protected. It is battery positive. And I've got these slow flow 20 amp class fuses. I'll probably use one of them and see if it holds when we turn it on. I never liked the situation to having an unfused positive to any device in the battery or outside the battery. I don't like this. Alright, that was the last step. So we now have a 20 amp fuse in the power line to the BMS. Let's see if this works. Wait, this is Andy from the future. I'm now shaved and it is a few days later. I have taken out the fuse again from the positive of the battery to the BMS here. I don't want to fuse it. The last thing you want is to lose your BMS. If the fuse blows, the BMS will turn off. You've got no control, no monitoring of the cells anymore. No safety. Probably a bad idea to fuse your safety device. Alright, back to the past. I think we are ready to start up the BMS and hope for the best. Okay, I've got the power button. Well, it stays on. Got all the bars. Let's have a look at the app. Alright, so I think it must be this one with the long number. Yes, it's beeping. That's the one. We probably modify name. Battery 1. We now have a battery. It's battery hashtag 1. Okay. Shit. Okay, let's see what version we have. I think, yeah, this is an older 19.13. Wow, that is an old one. I used it for testing purposes. That's why it has been powered on 38 times. All the voltages are looking fine. We've got a cell deviation of 2 millivolt. Very, very cool. I think it is already set up correctly. Yeah, battery capacity 5 ampere hours. We now have 304. Gives us the warning. That's good. So start balance 3.45, maximum balance current could be 2 amps for these larger cells, 3.65, RCV 3.45, 100% reset 3.445, which is a 55.12. The overvoltage recovery, that's fine. Undervoltage protection, cell undervoltage protection 2.5, power off at 4.9. Requested float voltage 3.35, which is 53.6 volts. Continuous charge current, okay, this needs to be a bit larger. Maybe we do 60 amps. Continuous discharging 100, we leave this as it is because we want to do a capacity test on this battery. So we may need a bit more power, but later on I will set this down to 50 or 60 amps as well. So the BMS will be the first point of defense in case we have a high current. BMS should shut down at 50 or 60 amps, depending what we are setting. And then we've got the breaker with 80 amps, and then we've got the fuse here with 150, 200 amps. And they should be totally super safe then. Okay, just have a quick look what's going on here. Temperatures. Not too worried about the temperatures. Data stored. RCV timer. Half an hour absorption time, that's fine. CAN protocol sits on Victron, that's probably important for us, because this BMS will be the master. And all the other protocols are not of interest. Okay, settings all look good. I just have a quick look at the cell wire resistance. So that looks all good. There's no super high or super low resistance. Perfect. All right, all good. Let me torque everything and then we can turn it on. Okay, I torqued these terminals here with 4 Newton meters as well as the main positive 4 Newton meters. Everything is 4 Newton meters in here. Totally sufficient. All right, let me turn on the circuit breaker and see how much current we will see in the BMS. Because the battery might be a little bit low now. 50 amps, not too bad. Okay, this is now being charged from all the other batteries because this one wasn't turned on for a couple of hours. Okay, my friends, that's basically it. That was the first, the first step and the task for today. Replacing the Overkill BMS with the JK inverter BMS here. Looks a bit messy now with the short cables here, but we will sort this out. I've ordered a 500 millimeter. Half a meter cable, and we will also extend these cables here and run them nicely with some Velcro to the back and into the box with the communication board. Alright my friends, so far this video from today replacing the Overkill JBD BMS with the JK inverter BMS. More videos are coming soon, they are on the way. Thank you very, very much for your overall support. A special thanks goes to the SPAT team, people who are donating a beer here and there or becoming a channel member and donating on a regular basis. Thank you very, very much for that. If you are new here, subscribe, leave a nice comment, give me a like. And until the next video, when we do the capacity test of the LF304 from EVE here. Until then, guys, you stay charged, stay safe, and thanks again for watching. See you then. Bye bye.